Hey everybody, welcome to the Fire It Up with CJ show. We are going to be talking about parenting today, specifically parenting teens with love and logic. And we have co-author of this book, Jim Fay here, who is, let's read about him. He has 31 years of experience as an educator and a school principal. And he is also someone who wrote a book that I picked up 16 years ago when I had a newborn, and I thought I better figure out what I'm doing as a parent because I have a feeling I have no idea what I'm doing, and so I picked up your book, Parenting with Love and Logic, and I was telling Jim earlier that this is how we've parented our children from day one. Really, is using this model, and then I think what happened is as I got into the teen years, I've kind of gotten away from the model. So this book was really, really a beautiful book to kind of reintroduce myself to some of the ideas in this it's in this lovely book. So welcome. It is such an honor to have you here. And
Oh, thank
as
you.
I was saying, I just am so deeply grateful for putting this body of work together. I can tell you minimally you've affected four lives greatly. So anyways, much gratitude.
Yeah. Well, my filing cabinet is filled with letters from people just like you who say my life's been changed, and that's what keeps me doing it at this age.
How
Uh,
old are you?
Well, I'm 82 now.
You're 82? Oh
Yeah,
my God, I love
and I'm still out there speaking and
that.
passionate about my
Wow.
work. And I'm so fortunate to have a son who runs the Love and Logic Institute for me. And
Wow.
he's a wonderful speaker. I have to keep working hard to so I can at least try to act like I'm as good as he is in front of an audience or whatever.
So does he have kids too?
Oh yes.
So you have three generations. So now you can see the effects
Yeah,
of this
if you get
model.
on our website, loveandlogic.com,
Mm-hmm.
there's a little place up there that says, Are you new to Love and Logic?
Mm-hmm.
And you see a little kid with a pirate outfit.
Mm-hmm.
And then down a little below that, you see a little red box, and you click on that, and you hear the whole history of Love and Logic all the way from the 70s and all of that.
Mm.
Then pretty soon you'll find out it's narrated by my 8-year-old grandson.
Oh,
And he says, This is Cody DeFay, third generation Love and Logic.
wow.
He actually thinks he runs the company, and we don't tell him any different because he works hard.
All right, that's fantastic. And that's what I wanted to start the first segment talking about is that well, first of all, tell us about what the general idea of love and logic is and what that means when raising your kids with this principle.
Well, that Love and Logic almost sounds like an oxymoron, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it takes an awful lot of love to
Mm-hmm.
allow your kids to make enough decisions where they can make some mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And then it takes even more love and courage to hold them accountable for those mistakes so that they get to learn in real world ways. So that
Mm-hmm.
by the time they leave the home and they see that world out there, they say, no big deal.
Mm-hmm.
I've lived in this kind of a world all my life. I'm ready for all this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm ready for the struggles. I'm ready for the disappointments. I'm ready for the successes. And I know value relationships and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So it's built around four basic principles. And the first one is that when we work with our kids, we do our best to try to maintain their dignity and our dignity at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
We try to share as much control as we can within limits. I want to say within limits
Mm-hmm.
because they're very important.
Mm-hmm.
We try to make sure the kids have to do more thinking than we do. And then we have a secret little trick on how, when you have to hold kids accountable, you can do it in such a way that they don't see you as mean or
Mm-hmm.
don't see you as the source of the problem,
Mm-hmm.
but they start to see that their bad decision was the
Mm-hmm.
source of their problem.
Mm-hmm.
So dad or mom's not the bad guy. Their bad decision was the bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that we do is built around those. And ever since the 70s, those principles have never changed. And they guide companies, they guide our company, they guide most leadership programs and so on. So that's what we're all about. Waking up
Mm-hmm.
every morning praying that our kids will make a whole lot of little mistakes today. Those kinds that are not life threatening,
Right,
those little mistakes
right.
where we can hold them accountable and we don't feel
Mm-hmm,
terrible about doing it. But
mm-hmm.
then they could start to develop a little voice, and that little voice in their head says, "Ooh, I wonder how my next decision is going to affect me."
Mm-hmm.
And if you get a kid who can say, "I wonder how my next decision is going to affect me," they're going to sail through those teen years a whole lot better.
Mm,
And once they get away from home, the chances are that they're not going to be coming back.
mm.
And of course, we want to treat the kids well during that time and maintain their dignity, because I want to remember they're going to pick my nursing home someday. And so the quality of that nursing home might have something to do with the relationship that I
Exactly. Please follow four aforementioned principles.
have. Yes, right.
Interesting. Okay, so um, since you have three generations, and you said we were talking earlier, and you said that you were using some of these principles that you use when you were running as a principal and running a school, so you've seen many generations of families come through. What's the end product if you use this love and logic model with these four principles? What kind of person would develop, so to speak? I mean, there's lots of things that go into making a person, but what are some things that you've noticed over time about what differentiates a love and logic person versus some other parenting styles?
Character.
Character?
That's what we're interested in.
Hmm.
You raise a kid with good character, they'll probably figure out how to get the kind of education they need.
Hmm.
You get to raise a kid who grades are the only thing.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? They probably get a job out there, but they won't last long in it. So
Hmm.
character is the thing, and we've been around working with kids long enough to know that no, there's no perfect way to do it.
Hmm.
Every kid is different, but we're in the business of, kind of, I guess you'd call it the Las Vegas plan. We're doing anything we can to raise the odds that the kids are going to come and turn out with good character.
Well, what is good character to you? What does good character mean? It seems obvious, but I'm going to ask you anyways. How do you define good character?
I look at my son, who I'm very proud of, president of the organization here. He's somebody who will always try to do the right thing, even if it's inconvenient, even
Mm-hmm.
if it hurts him. He's going to try to do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of person we're trying to raise.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So a person who's always trying to do the right thing.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
willing to try to anyway.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. Willing
sure.
to and it seems also like a good character is someone who actually even knows what the right thing is, which it sounds like a stupid thing to say, but sometimes people don't even know what the right thing is.
Well, if they grow up totally entitled, you know, having everything they want when they want it, without any struggle, without any investment in it, it's going to be pretty hard for those kids to know as young adults what the right thing is.
Mm-hmm.
Because in their mind, the only thing is right is what's convenient for them. That's what they've been
Right.
taught. Day
Mm-hmm.
one. We have an epidemic of that kind of thing in America right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's interesting because it's the generation of millennials right now that I think that you're speaking of, millennials and the generation below it that were raised with this kind of entitlement. Um, what can we do? I mean, what we can do is, I can work with my children to make sure that they don't feel entitled. But what does a parent do so that they don't raise entitled children?
Well, they start out right away, remembering that the kids need to be part of the family
Hmm.
and they need to be doing their fair share of the work in the family.
Hmm.
That's a big part of it.
You mean
How
with
many kids do you
chores
know
and things
today?
like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
How many kids do you know who live like honored guests in the home?
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
never, and they grow up to be unhappy people.
Mm.
So yeah, we want to get started out early
Hmm.
with them realizing that parents can be loving authority figures.
Mm,
because their view of authority figures is going to be that internalized mother or father that
mm.
they later on see out in public. And if they have no respect for mom and dad, why should they have respect for anybody else who's in that position?
Oh, wow.
Bosses and so on.
Yeah, I just
So,
interviewed this gentleman who he does research on people who are purpose driven. So they're at work and they have a purpose and mission at work. And people who are non purpose driven, which are there for position, money, title, like they're just
yeah,
there for the rewards. And what he found was that they're doing this massive study. They're in the midst of doing a study. He's probably surveyed 1,000 people. And one of the key, I said, well, what can you do with these non-purpose people? He's like, well, raise them not to be that way. And I was like, well, that's too late because we have like 80% of the
yeah,
people aren't that way. And he said, when we actually looked back at the research, what we found was exactly what you just said. It has to do with their relationship with authority. And if they'd had a bad relationship with their parents and authority, then they go into work in this entitled place where
yeah.
they're doing work for not for purpose, for meaning, for helping others, but to do it to get money so that they can, so that's anyways, I just heard research that he's just doing right now with the University of Michigan.
We
The
keep
same thing.
hearing new research constantly that says we're doing the right thing, and thank
Yeah.
goodness for that. If I looked at that and it said we're doing the wrong thing, I'd have to apologize to millions of people. I've spoken to almost 1 million people in live
Wow.
audiences over the last
Yeah.
35 years. I had a lot of apologizing to do. But,
All
we
right.
need to start out early and give kids one of the greatest gifts they will ever get.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that is mom and dad's yes is yes,
Hmm.
and their no is no. And if we
Right.
don't establish that, forget the whole thing.
Right. Yeah,
When
they go to work, they actually have a boss that says something to them like, "Well, that boss is unreasonable," They're not being fair, right? Because that's what I'm carrying forward from that, right?
and no other parenting technique is ever going to work.
Hmm.
When we look at love and logic, we know it's built around the basic human needs of all people, regardless of cultures, color of skin, anything. People basically need to feel safe. They have boundaries, limits, and boundaries. That's what creates safety,
Mm-hmm.
emotional and physical safety.
Mm-hmm.
They need to feel loved. They need to feel like they're important to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? They they need to feel like they're an important member of a family, a needed, important part of a family.
Mm-hmm.
No. So when those things are not in place, we see people floundering and acting out and doing all kinds of crazy things, having all kinds of issues.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to start out really young with the kids, letting them know that they are very safe in a very loving way
Mm-hmm.
uh, by putting limits and boundaries on them.
Hmm.
And in love and logic, we don't set limits by ordering people around.
Mm-hmm.
We set limits by controlling something we can actually control, and that's
Mm-hmm.
ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't say, hurry up. We say, my car is going to be leaving in 5 minutes. We don't say, eat that food right now, or you're going to sit there till it's eaten. We say, hey, food will be on the table for the next 20 minutes. Get what you need to make it to the next meal.
Right, right. Because
Yeah,
you control when you take the meal, when you drive the
yeah,
car, you're in control. But it's loving, right? You give them 20
yeah.
minutes. You tell them that the car's leaving 5 minutes. They
We
still
don't
have options.
say, don't drink and drive
Right.
to a teenager. We say we're more than willing to allow driving when we don't worry about alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Limits,
See the difference
boundaries.
there?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
that's a loving way to set the limits.
Yeah.
But kids are going to test the limits. That's their job.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because the most basic of all human needs is that feeling of security, physical and emotional security. And if I don't have any limits, I don't have that. So they're going to constantly test their parents regardless of how good those parents get.
Mm,
They're going to test every limit that comes up. And the
mm,
parent who cannot handle that testing, in other words, cannot turn their yes into yes and their no into no, there's nothing else they're going to be able to do with that kid because that kid believes you're not, I don't have to listen to you.
mm-hmm,
So, one of the first things we want to teach parents, something that they can take home from this radio show
mm-hmm,
and use immediately, is how to deal with the kids when they test the limits.
mm-hmm.
Now, I'm going to give you a lot of different examples, but that doesn't mean that you stand there and debate with a kid. These are just examples now. But
Okay.
isn't it funny how sneaky they can be?
Yep.
And they don't do it on purpose. It's their
Right.
job. They have to know we love them enough to enforce these limits. And it usually starts out with, well, it's not fair.
Right.
And have you ever known a parent who spent a whole lot of time trying to explain why it's fair?
Right. Yeah.
And have you ever
Sometimes.
known a kid who appreciates that?
Mm-mm.
No, they will keep you going and keep
Yeah.
arguing and
Yeah.
arguing. So when it says it's not fair, the minimum number of words and the softest volume possible becomes power when we say something like, I know. And that's all we say. Well, my friends don't have to do this. Well, I know, you know,
Mm,
and we turn and walk away. Or one of my favorites, and this will work no matter what the kid says. And what did I say? It's a nice question. And what did I say? Well, this is really stupid. And what did I say? You don't love me. And what did I say? Walk off. Well, none of my friends have. I'm the only kid in the whole school. And what did I say? You know,
mm-hmm.
yeah, well, dad lets us. And what did I say? See, great parents don't spend an awful lot of time trying to figure out a lot of words. They have a few of them that they keep on the tip of their tongue so they don't have to think, because the kids will always get us when we're most vulnerable and can't think, right?
Okay.
So,
I get
it
it.
doesn't
I get it.
matter.
I understand. I understand. I understand. And I understand what you said. Okay, I'll tell you one of the conundrums that I have, and I would love to get some advice on. I'll give you two ones which I think are very common when you have kids in teenage years. One is computer time, and we actually worked with our kids to actually say, well, let's actually look at what they say as their reasonable limits. And I know in your book you said you recommend 30 minutes, and they say that their friends get longer, and as long as they get good grades, why do they need to do, why do they need to have shorter than that? And anyways,
Let
but we,
me just rephrase what this kid says.
okay.
As long as I have good grades, who cares what kind of character I have?
Hmm. Okay.
Mhm.
Yes.
So I would just ask a kid if he said, "Well, as long as I get good grades." Oh, are you telling me that as long as you have good grades, that doesn't matter about your character?
Mm,
Doesn't matter how you support the family.
mm,
It doesn't matter whether or not what you're doing creates a problem as long as you get good grades.
mm-hmm,
Oh, thanks for sharing that. I'm going to have to go give that some thought.
mm-hmm,
See, if you stop in the middle of these discussions before you get upset and
mm-hmm.
walk off, who's going to have to do a lot of thinking?
Yeah, the parent.
Yeah, yeah, and the kid is. See,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
now we've shared the thinking. I'm going to go off and think about this
yeah,
before I spout off.
yep.
But the kids usually, if we don't just keep debating until they win, they've got to do a lot of thinking.
Well,
But
one of
if
the
we debate, they will win.
yeah, it's true. Well,
Uh,
one of the things that
so to
you
answer your question there on
yeah,
the time, I usually say, what do you think would be a reasonable amount of time that would be good for you
yeah,
and would not take away from you being part of this family
mm-hmm,
and maybe would not cause me to have to worry
mm-hmm, mm,
about you getting addicted to that kind of thing. Yeah. So then they have a chance to think about it. And once they give us an amount, he says 3 hours.
right,
And I'd like to say, you got to be kidding, you
right,
know. But instead, I say, well, thanks for sharing that. Let me give it some thought.
mm-hmm,
I'll
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
then I might come back and say, now you said 3 hours. Can you think of why that would be good in
Mm-hmm.
terms of those other things like being part of the family and
Mm-hmm.
doing your fair share of the work around the house and being able to talk and visit with you since we love you and see something other than just the top of your head while you're looking at your device,
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and they may say, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I want to spend time with my friends. And like this is how I see my friends. I don't ask you to drive me all around town to meet my friends. It's an easy thing for you. Don't you want me to have friends?
I think it's important for you to have friends. It's important part for you to have friends. It's important for you to be part of the family.
So why don't you let me play more time then?
Oh, you know, if I get in a bind with a kid, I'll usually say something like this. You know, if you don't figure that out by next week at this time, come back and visit with me.
Hmm.
And on some things where I'm going to be just real solid about it, if you don't figure that out by the time you have teenagers of your own,
Hmm.
we'll visit again then. Okay. But my yes has to become yes and my no has to become no.
Right.
And I'm
Yeah.
going to try to stay away from having to just arbitrarily say this is the way it is.
Hmm.
But once in a while, there has to be a line that's drawn in the sand
Yeah.
that says the parents are on this
Well,
side.
especially in the book in the book you talk about one, which I think is true, is kids get addicted and then they can't stop. Like even myself, I get addicted. I'm like, why am I looking at Facebook? I don't need to be looking at Facebook. I'm just addicted to looking at Facebook. So it's not as if I'm any different. It's hard to actually withdraw that addiction to our computing devices, I think.
Yeah, there's a portion of our kids who are so addicted to it that if you take it away, they will do anything to get it back. And that's no different than an addiction to alcohol or drugs or anything else. Almost anything that can capture our attention can become addictive.
Hmm.
And then that's not good for the kids at all.
Hmm. Hmm. All right. Well, I know that's one common thing among parents, including myself. And the other one is okay, so you talk about, you said that making sure that they don't do things that harm themselves, right? So you give them control and latitude. And in the book, um, you have this great diagram. This one, I don't know if you can even see it, but it shows about
So, V of love.
the V of love. So
Yeah.
tell us about the V of love and what control looks like at age, 5 to 10 to 15 to 21. Like what's the V of love look like? And
Sure. Well, the sides of the V
hmm.
represent the ideal way to do this. If you could be close to perfect with as you're raising your kids.
Hmm.
And so it starts out with a little baby who has no control.
Hmm.
And then pretty soon, by 6 months or 8 months, they're deciding about which pair of socks they're going to wear. You've got a green one and a blue one up
Yes.
there. And pretty soon they're deciding about things like do they want to put their shirt on first or their pants on first? And
Hmm.
as they get to be a little bit older, they want to start deciding about juice versus milk and all kinds of things like that. We're constantly allowing them to make decisions that make us happy. It isn't one decision makes us happy and one doesn't.
Right.
It's we give them two decisions and we'd be deliriously happy with either one.
Right.
Yeah, okay. If we ever foolish enough to give them one we like and one we don't, it's uncanny how they always know which one we don't
Right.
want.
Exactly. That's very
Oh,
true.
and by the time they're now 6 and 7 years of age, they're deciding about how they're going to be spending their allowance,
Hmm.
and who their friends are going to be. And we're constantly thinking as a parent, how many little decisions can I give this kid that
Hmm.
don't affect me at all?
Hmm.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Do you want to do your chores before dinner or after dinner, or would you rather do them on Friday or on Saturday? All those kind of things. The whole idea is during this time, we're actually establishing a savings account in their mind. It's a savings account of control. So
Hmm.
they start to developing the idea that when I'm around these parents, I don't have to fight to get some control needs met. you know.
Mm-hmm.
So we give them lots of little choices like that, and then once in a while we take a withdrawal from that savings account, just like at the bank.
Mm-hmm.
We say, well, this time it's my turn to choose.
Right.
You get a turn, I get a turn, it's my turn. So
Mm-hmm.
on the big issues, it's my turn.
Mm-hmm. Ah,
Now,
I
as
see.
they're getting into junior high school, they're starting to be having more decisions about clothes and friends and homework time and the amount of time they spend uh, with their friends and, uh, of course, how they're spending their allowance, all kinds of things like that. As they get older, we keep expanding that so that by the time they're 16, 17, 18 years of age, they're making most of the big decisions in their life, but they're not making any decisions ever that affect the lives of other family members or the parents.
Mm,
See how
okay.
that works?
Yes.
Now, so it's a lot easier to boss a kid around when you give them a lot of little choices along the way because you can always say, wait a minute, aren't I
Right.
usually pretty reasonable?
Yeah.
When I let you decide, well, it's my turn now. Thanks for understanding. Right? Now that's the perfect model.
Right.
We're never going to get perfect with it, but we're gonna have that kind of a mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what happens so often, and you'll see that in that book there, you'll see an inverted V.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is parents, through all their love, are letting the kids decide about all kinds of things when they're really little.
Ah.
And there are no limits. Then the kids start to act out. Then the parents start to say, we're going to have to clamp down here on this kid.
Mm.
And the kid then fights that and acts out more. So they clamp down more and more. And pretty soon, you've come to a point of where in some families that's incarceration for the kid and or um, therapy, those kind of things, residential type
Right.
situations where we finally have to take away all that control and start all over again.
Now, is that a result of, you talk about different parenting styles. You talk about laissez-faire parenting. Is this inverted V, is that what happens when you have laissez-faire parenting, which is kind of
That's
like,
what happens when you have the laissez-faire parenting or
okay.
the helicopter parenting, which has just run rampant in America.
Ah, so helicopter parenting causes this too, huh?
Oh, yeah, because they're constantly in there solving the problem for the child, and he's never having to struggle and never having to do anything himself or to solve problems himself. And so he starts to feel more and more helpless all the time.
Ah,
So
interesting.
you want to use that love and logic technique early in life, where when a kid has a problem, instead of rushing in there to solve it, say, wow, what do you think you're going to do? Emphasize that. What do you think you're going to do? No, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. Well, would you like to hear what some other kids have tried before?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, I don't know. Well, if you get interested in that, I'll see if I can come up with a list of several things that other kids have tried. So then we run off and we have our talk to our friends, and they give us some ideas about good ideas and bad ideas that other kids have tried. And then we list them for the kid. Well, some kids, they go over there out there on the playground, they bust that kid a good one in the mouth and say, I'm playing it anyway. Well, how
Right.
would that work? Then we always say, how would that work?
Ah,
Now,
okay.
the reason you start out with bad ideas is no matter how good the idea is, the first one they're going to reject it. So don't waste a good one. Yeah.
You're such a good strategist.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, okay, I get it.
And well, some kids they get an army of their friends and then they go threaten that guy. How would that work out?
Mm-hmm.
And other kids they would go to their teacher and tattle to the teacher. How do you think that would work out? So you give them several ideas, and you don't have to come up with the perfect answer. All we're trying to do is getting the kid thinking that the quality of my life has to do with my decisions. That's what you're doing here.
Mm,
So even if he doesn't like any of them, you say, well, good luck. Hope that works out for you.
right.
So we're quick to do that, not quick to fix problems for kids.
Ah, okay. So I made I made a fatal flaw. My son is he does homework by memory. So he remembers like, oh, the teacher said I have this on Wednesday, and so he never writes
Yeah.
anything
Uh-huh.
down.
Yeah.
And in junior year, it's beginning to catch up with him because the assignments are colossal, and he just can't keep all of them in his head.
Uh-huh.
And he missed one of the assignments, and he actually got it affected his grade pretty
Uh-huh.
substantially, like
Sure.
from an A to a C. So he
Uh-huh.
so he kind of got to that point, and I said, "Wow, that's really hard. I'm sorry that happened to you.
Mhm.
That would be hard." And we all make mistakes. Mom actually has had times when I've missed appointments. It's really hard, and you feel really embarrassed when that happens. And you learn from your mistakes and you move on. Um, and then he's like, "Well, I don't think I'm going to change anything." And I said, "Well, what do you, but I didn't do it." And I was like, "Why wouldn't you change something?"
Yeah. That's all of our tendency right there.
Yeah, so it
A
probably
joint
would have
human
been
race.
better to say, well, how does that, how do you think that's going to work out when something
Yeah.
like this happens
Okay.
again? Well, I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't think my teacher should be doing this anyways. It's like, well, seems like the teacher's doing that anyway, so what are
Yeah.
you going to do?
Well,
How are you going
here's
to handle
another
it?
thought for you.
Yeah.
You could end, some people would end with saying, well, in case that doesn't work out, what kind of a plan do you have for a fallback plan?
Oh, I like that.
And then
Yes.
just leave it. See,
Yes.
if we can allow ourselves to not get closure with a situation,
Wait.
the kids have to think more.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
so and
what's
it's
your fallback plan?
yeah, and it's actually putting the responsibility, and it's like I'm sure you'll come up with a fallback plan, but in case that doesn't if
Yeah.
cases your current strategy
Uh-huh.
doesn't work, what would work for
Yeah.
you? And you just leave it. You don't go like
See,
you don't come back a week. What's your fallback plan now?
and then you go to prayer. Please, Lord, just think if this does not work for him, how
Uh,
much wiser he's going to be.
yeah.
But think about this. What if he finds a good solution and he does it on his own instead of my providing it? Think how good he's going to feel about himself. That's where self-concept is built.
Ah, and that's where character is
It's
built. Yes.
yeah, and
Yeah.
that's where the helicopter parent is so quick always to be the one who solves the problem,
Mm,
sending the covert message that says you can't solve problems. That's not in your DNA. It's in my DNA.
mm,
And that's called stealing from kids, isn't it?
okay. So yeah, one of the things that's hard, and maybe it's kind of it goes in the realm of none of my business, is that one of the things that they press so much in school now is that you have to self-advocate for yourself. And I have two very shy kids who are not self-advocators. So
Mhm.
they turn in an assignment, the teacher doesn't see it, they mark them low on the assignment because the teacher for whatever reason lost it or whatever. And
Mhm.
then the teacher, I'll say, well, go, are you going to go talk to the teacher to tell them you did turn it in and they didn't see it? And they said, well, I don't know. And I was like, what is this? I don't know. Why wouldn't you just say? And they're like, okay. Like the next day they would go in. So I guess that's an example of a helicopter parent. Is that an
Yeah, the
example?
helicopter parent rushes in there and does it for the child.
Oh, so I would call the teacher and say,
Yeah,
"Oh, well,
yeah,
Jida
yeah.
didn't la 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 la. What happens?"
And the love and logic or consultant type parent would give the kid several different ways of doing it and also give him as one option. Well, some kids just prefer to just keep it to themselves and have a bad grade. You
Oh,
know, because some people are happier when they're happy, and some people are happier when they're miserable. So you get to decide.
that's great. Yeah, some people are happier.
You know,
I would have
this
never
is
thought of
not
that in
me
a
who's
million
gonna.
years. Yeah, well, I think that that's the outcome, right? If some people are just happier when they have a bad grade, so maybe
Yeah,
that's what you want,
yeah,
you know?
uh-huh.
Interesting. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
I
hard
love you
thing.
too much to get in the way of your happiness.
Yeah, well, it's hard because I think that not all kids know how to self-advocate, but maybe because we are advocating for them all the time.
Well, sure. And they need to see us do it. Parents who are never able to say no to their kids
Hmm.
often raise kids who can't say no.
Oh, huh. Oh,
Well, how
no.
do, how do we learn to be big? We learn by watching those models that we had, our parents
Mm-hmm.
and our teachers. And we
Mm-hmm.
watch to see what they do. We don't listen to see what they say.
Mm-hmm.
We're interested in what they do. That's what sticks with us subconsciously.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Interesting. Um, Okay, so wanted to ask you about entitlement again. So here's what I see happening with a lot of people. Nowadays, it's very hard for people who graduate from college to actually afford to live in a decent place. So they may be like living in New York City, sharing an apartment with four other people
Mm,
in a really crappy in a very
sure.
dangerous neighborhood. And so I've seen parents buy these kids apartments, in a nice neighborhood in New York City where they live alone. And by no surprise, then some of them have kids that say, "Oh, I don't really feel like I just got this job at this, prestigious law firm. I don't want to work there anymore because I don't like it."
Yeah.
And then they're living in this fancy apartment in New York City, and there they are. I mean, I don't even know what to make out of that. Is that a
Well,
helicopter?
it's a common thing, but they're actually living the same life they lived as little children in that family where the parents took care of everything. There was no struggles.
Ah, so let that kid just say, "Well, I guess I hope you can actually find a new I mean, so you don't even buy them a place, or if they're in an unsafe neighborhood
Oh,
living with
no,
four
we
people?
don't buy them a place. No.
No, you just have
You
them.
know, and they're going to call us. The unfortunate thing is once kids leaves home, the calls that we get usually are not on the days when they're having a great time.
Right. That's true.
Yeah. And also they seem to be able to tell intuitively that we're vulnerable at that moment. So they call up and tell their sad story.
Mm-hmm.
And it's since we love our kids, it's awfully easy to jump in right away and say, "Well, I'll solve that for you," or tell them what to do.
Mm,
So we wrote a book called Grandparenting with Love and Logic.
mm-hmm.
And we thought that we had written all the things that grandparents needed. We gave it to some focus groups and we'd missed the important thing. They wanted to know, what do I say to my kid when he calls asking for money? He's a grown adult now,
Wow.
and he's calling asking for money. What do I do?
Wow.
And the answer is you say, "Oh, that's really rough. Thanks for sharing all that with me. And what are your thoughts about solving this? What do you think you're going to do?" And they say, "Well, we thought we'd ask you for some money." Okay. Well, thank you. Let me have a couple of days here to think about that. I'll get back to you and I'll tell you what'll work for me.
Mm, mm-hmm.
What will work for me? So
Mm-hmm.
that gives you time to get up your courage, get over, because it's going to take courage to say no, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
going to be
Say,
hard.
well, here's what I think will work for me, you know, and we might offer a little bit, we might not. I knew one lady said, "I think what'll work for me is I'm going to spend that money on a cruise." But by then she had enough. But she says, if I had answered him immediately, I would have given him the money,
Right.
and that money would have crippled him. See, that's the bad thing.
Mm,
Yeah, once we start providing those easy solutions, we're on that slope toward crippling our kids.
mm,
And we've already done a pretty good job, or they wouldn't be acting the way they are.
right. Right.
They would be more likely to be calling up and say, "I've got this problem, and I think I've got this plan, and how do you think that would work?"
Right.
That's a kid with character.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's interesting. Yeah. And I think that those kids that I think I'm guilty. I'm now realizing I'm a helicopter parent. I'm a helicopter in some instances. I'm a drill sergeant in some instances, and I'm a love and logic parent in other instances.
Join the human race.
Yeah, I mean, and
Yeah.
do you think that you can have kids that end up being okay? Like, what my parents were drill sergeants, laissez-faire, and helicopter.
Hmm.
No love and logic, but they had these three other combinations, and I'm fine. Like, I was turned out to be a pretty responsible person who paid her bills and had an apartment and paid my
Yeah.
way. So can you have these other styles and still have kids that are okay, that end up landing on their feet and okay?
Yeah, you really can. We over the years we've seen kids who parents did everything right and their kids turned out wrong,
Mm-hmm.
and we see parents who do everything wrong and their kids turn out right.
Hmm.
But remember, we're on the Las Vegas plan. We're trying to raise the odds that, and the odds are not very strong.
Yeah.
that kids will turn out like you did based on parents who were not into really creating character. You may have created that on your own.
Yeah, I don't know how it happened,
We
but
don't know where that comes
I
from.
don't. So some of these things do. I mean, because I was reading and thinking, well, I actually know of a lot of people who have had drill sergeant parents, and their kids are fantastic, or
Yeah.
laissez-faire parents. I would say my husband's family was more laissez-faire, and they're fine. Like he's great, you know. So I guess I guess it's what you're saying. It's the do you want to roll the dice or not?
Yeah.
And, I think that I've done a combination of these things and probably helicopter up until this point more than I should. But I guess what I didn't really realize, and that I think that you really emphasize in this book, and this is like the third or fourth parenting book that I've had so
Mhm.
far. And it wasn't until this book I'm like, okay, I've got to change. In fact, I got into the car and I said, Mom has been reading this book, and I'm telling you that I'm going to start changing my parenting style. I'm just informing you. And actually, you have the permission to say to me at any time you feel like I'm like messing around with your stuff, you could say, Mom, it's not your decision,
Yeah.
and we'll see from there. But, because I have a tendency to want to jump in and problem solve. I'm a strategic consultant. That's what I do, but I said, I just want you to tell me to stop because it's a habit. I'm going to try breaking it, but I want you to help me too because we all have to start changing.
Good for you. That's a
Yeah.
wonderful way to change.
Yeah, so we'll
Yeah.
see. I'll talk to you next year. We'll
Yeah.
see how these kids end up being. This was really, really wonderful. Tell us about your website too, so folks can go and how would they join some of your programs? So it's
Well,
Parenting Teens.
the wonderful thing about Love and Logic is all this free stuff that we do.
Mm-hmm.
There's a free email tip every week,
Mm,
Insiders Club. They can call our 800 number and get on that. There's no charge for it. Every week you get something that you can use right away, something that's practical.
mm-hmm.
We're much more into practical. How do you say it? How do you do it? And then we are into theoretical things.
Mm-hmm.
There are lots of articles, downloadable things.
Mm-hmm.
On that website, they can get into um, all kinds of, they see all of our products. They see about our conferences or seminars.
Mm-hmm.
They learn a lot of tricks on there that we put on for free.
Mm-hmm.
It's just really a fun thing to be on.
Mm-hmm. And when I called the 800 number, I heard there was it was someone teaching a workshop. So I could call the 800 number and listen to, it sounds like someone teaching a workshop. Is that what it is?
There are 20,000 people around the world who teach Love and Logic classes.
Ah,
So
okay.
in your area, there are going to be several of them who are teaching regular classes for Love and Logic. Some of those are free, some of them through their churches, some through the schools, some of them they charge for it, but you can get in there with other groups of people who have similar problems and build support teams. So you can learn about that on
Yeah.
our website. And if everything else fails, when you call our 800 number, a real person answers the phone. You're going to first of all think it's got to be a recording, but it's a real person, and they'll talk to you about what's going on with your kids and give you some advice about where to.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I didn't understand. So it's not just
Yeah.
listening to a radio. There's a live person who's going to answer my questions that I have about my
Well,
kid.
what they're going to probably do is say, on this audio, you're going to hear some stories all about that are going to help
Ah.
you. And so once in a while, they can just answer the question for you. Other times, they're going to point you to the answers. But there's people here who really know Love and Logic and
Mm,
care about people learning about it.
yeah, that's
Uh,
excellent. Tell us the URL again for your website. Love and
oh,
Logic.
it's loveandlogic.com.
Loveandlogic.com.
Yeah, that's spelled
Fantastic.
out the and.
Okay.
And that 800 number is 800 338 4065. 800 338 4065.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah,
Thank you. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
this has been a delightful interview.
Oh, it's been
You
great.
did a nice job on this with me. And thanks for the patience with the computers. I don't know what happened. It
Oh, it's been fabulous. It
crashed.
just feel it's like It's like a Make-A-Wish Foundation. Like I was able to talk to you. It's just been so fantastic. Thank you so
Well,
much.
thank
Thank
you.
you, everyone. Thank you, Rebel. And
It means so much to me that you're listening to the show. Would love your support in any way by giving me comments below or to subscribe to the show or share the show with friends. Thank you again for your support. Love and blessings.